Hello everybody! If this is your first time seeing this video, welcome to the channel, and if this is not, welcome back. My name is ScopeSF, and I am the man who is on a mission to educate everybody about the wonderful world of the Persist combo. As I've been kind of diving deeper into different archetypes and different strategies that all revolve around the Persist combo, eventually it comes down to the question of, you know how Persist combo works. The only way to vary it up is by switching colors, and if you're switching colors, you're kind of switching secondary game plans. You're really asking yourself, what does each color bring to the table that other colors don't? So that's why I developed Gruul Persist. That's why I'm also looking into mono green Persist. And this is something that's kind of been, I've kind of been tinkering with it. I really am not an expert on this. I don't even know if this is the right route to go when it comes to making mono green Persist, but this is the idea that I had. And as I've kind of been looking at all possible options, this is ultimately what I came up with. So if you're going to go mono green Persist, probably the biggest benefit to going mono green would be these cards over here. We already talked about Collected Company. It works really well in the Gruul Persist variant of the deck, but a new addition is Eldritch Evolution. It's a sorcery where we sacrifice a creature. So already we're a sacrifice deck, so you know we're going to be getting some interesting value out of that. But if we keep going, search your library for a creature card with mana value X or less, where X is 2 plus the sacrificed creature's mana value. So considering that our lowest CMC creature is Arbor Elf, at the very least we're going to get a creature with converted mana cost 3. But considering that average converted mana cost is, it could go 2 or 3, we could very easily get to our 4 CMC creatures right off the bat. Put that card onto the battlefield, very important, and then we just exile Eldritch Evolution, so that way it's a balancing factor, so that way we're not doing cheap graveyard shenanigans with just a 3 CMC sorcery. So the reason this really only fits into mono green variants of the deck is because it has 2 green, I don't know what you call those, pips, 2 green pips, it requires 2 green colored mana. So that's the biggest reason we're only running it in this version of the deck and probably not any others, but we'll see where that goes. I honestly didn't even think I'd be running it in this version of the deck, but here we are. Otherwise, you have your standard Persist package, so running 10 Persist creatures, not 12. We're cutting down 2 of the lesser Master Cores. Very specific reason for that, which I'll talk about. Well, I guess there's 2 very specific reasons. One of them we'll get to in a second. The other one is it says, as an additional cost to the spell, discard a card. I really don't like that. I don't like card disadvantage for a combo deck that that requires multiple pieces in order to pull off. If Persist was like a 2-card combo, first off, it'd be incredibly broken, but if it was a 2-card combo, I wouldn't mind discarding just a random card. And honestly, most of the time, if you play your cards right, pun intended, then you don't have to worry about the discard downside, but ultimately, it just feels like a nuisance, and I want to play a game to have fun. I don't like nuisances in my games. That being said, it's still a Persist creature. It's colorless, so it fits into literally any type of deck that we want, and it is still 2 CMC, so we can get it off of Eldritch Evolution or Collected Company. So it's still worth running. I'm just not running as many of them, and we'll get onto that in a second. But otherwise, 4 copies of Kitchen Finks, 4 copies of Safehold Elite. As you can see, because they are Selesnya mana, you could run it as either green or white. So as far as I'm concerned, this is still mono green because we only have a mono green land base, and we can still cast these. Otherwise, standard fare, Malira. Everybody knows about Malira. Works with Persist because you don't put -1/-1 counters on creatures. Otherwise, the new additions, we have Renata, Called to the Hunt. Each other creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. That's why it's in the deck. It works with the combo if we can pull the combo off. Normally you don't see this run in too many lists because it costs 4 mana in total, compared to, let's say, the very popular mono white list that has Vizier Remedies and Anavenza Kintree Spirit, both of which are just 2 CMC. So you could cast either one of those, or you could cast one of each of both of those for the same cost that it costs to cast Renata. So a little bit rougher on the mana cost, which is, like I said, why you don't see her too often. But Renata serves a very interesting purpose in this deck, which I'll get to in a second. But yeah, otherwise, for mono green, because we're a little bit limited on options for what we can cast that kind of fights back against the persist counters, we have to run Renata. She is a necessity. If we were running like a Selesnya list or even the Gruul list, my Gruul list doesn't run any Renatas, it just runs Maliras and a lot of other Gruul cards that work really well, like with the persist combo. But if we didn't have those luxuries, we have to go this. And then 1 copy of Ivy Lane Denizen. This card essentially works the same as Renata. The caveat is, it says, whenever another green creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So it does work with the persist combo as long as the creature is green. If we have our Safeholds Elites and Kitchen Finxes out on the field, we don't mind that. The combo still goes, but it does not work with Lesser Masticore. So that's why we're only running 2 copies of Lesser Masticore and 1 copy of Ivy Lane Denizen, because we don't want to luck ourselves out with just, we want to be able to say that we're running a combo where as long as we have one of these, and one of these, then we can combo off and we're good to go. If we have this and this, it doesn't work. But as long as, that's the unholy combination. As long as we have, anything else from either of these piles, we're still good and we can still recur the persist. Now, as far as sacrifice outlets, we're running the standards, running 4 copies of Altar of Dementia, and only 3 copies of Blasting Station. The reason we're cutting one of these, and this is where the deck gets a little bit interesting. The reason that we cut 1 Blasting Station is because it's 3 CMC. That's why we did it, as opposed to an Altar of Dementia. But the reason we cut it at all is because I wanted to make room for Ronus the Indomitable. Ronus, very interesting include in this deck. Here is my entire thought process behind it. Otherwise, Arbor Elves and Utopia Sprawls. I really like a Utopia Sprawl because it's hard to kill. The opponent has to either have destroy target land or destroy target enchantment, which can show up in Modern, but a lot more rare as opposed to creature hate or even artifact hate. And then Arbor Elf just works really well with Utopia Sprawl. So here's a little bit of a mana ramp package, yada yada yada. Not necessary, but it's cool. It's kind of there. Anyway, Ronus. So this deck, because of Eldritch Evolution and Collected Company, very, very creature heavy. And, we're dedicating 8 entire cards, almost a 1/6 of the deck, just to tutoring up creatures, which is really great and can provide a lot of implicit value in order to kind of manipulate this set here. Like, for example, if we do Collected Company, I guess the manipulation comes more from Eldritch Evolution, but let's say we have a Safehold Elite out and we use Eldritch Evolution on that. We sacrifice it, and then we can use that to get any of these cards. Now, with the way the stack works, you're ultimately going to end up with the -1/-1 counter on your persist creature, because with layering and everything like that, the persist trigger has to happen before this spell resolves, and this is the tutor spell, so your creature's coming back before you can actually search for a creature and put it onto the battlefield, and any of these creatures need to be on the battlefield in order to fight off the -1/-1 counter. So a little bit of a rough spot there, but that's probably like a worst case scenario. And even then, we already do have 10 persist creatures to start off with. So we can, like, let's say you have another persist creature in hand, all of a sudden, the Eldritch Evolution is still going to be really good value in order to get, I don't know, Renata, if we want to. And it's more of a value engine as opposed to the infinite combo that Persist is known for, but I still think it's worth it just having this creature tutoring package as a way of, we'll call it like combo fixing, so that way you can know that between these sets you get all the pieces that you need at a specific time. And worst case scenario, let's say you don't have any of your Utopia sprawls, but you still have an Arbor Elf on the field, you can use Eldritch Evolution on the Arbor Elf, and that way you don't have to sacrifice either a persist creature or the cards that counter the counters, you know, the CTCTCs, before you actually have either of them out on the battlefield. So still pretty nice value all around. The problem with this, which is where the deck gets a little bit interesting, these only have to do with creatures, and they have nothing to do with artifacts. So while you have a lot more control and a lot more manipulation as to which creatures you're getting, if you don't have any of your sacrifice artifacts, you're in a lot of trouble. Probably the best way to play the mono green variant, if we're going off of this list specifically, is you have a starting hand that has ideally 3 lands, at least 2 lands, because we're only running 18 lands in the deck, and you kind of really want those. I would even say, like, you're still looking for 2 lands, even if you have an Arbor Elf and or a Utopia Sprawl. Like, this mana ramp package is not going to be enough. I would still say you want to hit your land drops at least for your first 3 turns, guaranteed. So, yeah, keep a land with hands, but you're also going to want to keep a hand that has at least 1, if not 2 of these, if you're specifically going around the combo route. Because with green, I don't really want to repeat the same process and beat a dead horse, but counting all of these up in total, we have 19 creatures, and we have 8 cards that manipulate that count. So even though we only have 19 creatures that are necessary for the combo, we have that number can essentially go up as far as percentage of deck because of how much we can manipulate that number. We're probably essentially talking more like about 24, 25 creatures, almost half the deck, even including lands, that is dedicated to the combo. So it works out really nicely there. But like I said, these cards only go for creature cards, not for artifacts. So if we don't have a hand that has artifacts, or if we just lose these artifacts because of artifact destruction, which is going to be a problem specifically for the mono green variant here, then we're kind of in a sticky situation where we can't pull off the combo. And at most, if we have this part set up, the most that we actually have is consistent chump blockers, because even if we chump with any of our persist creatures, they just come back, and that's still pretty good value, but it's not going to win us the game. The point of Ronus is that he is a green creature, he fits the mono green, and he is 3 CMC or less, which means that not only do we guarantee to hit it with Collected Company, well, I mean, if he is within the top 6 cards, like we could pull him with Collected Company. It's not like we overlook that specific creature because its cost is, higher than 3 CMC. So we can hit him with Collected Company, but we can also pick him up with Eldritch Evolution regardless of what creature we have. So even if we wanted to do like super high value, like we have the Ivy Lane Denizen and the Kitchen Finks, and then we use Eldritch Evolution, we could still use that to pull Ronus, and the benefit to that is now we have a Ronus because we still have the Kitchen Finks and the Ivy Lane Denizen. Or even if we only wanted to sacrifice an Arbor Elf because Arbor Elf did its job with its mana ramp and everything like that, we can do that and get the Ronus. Now the point of Ronus is that, he's also an indestructible creature, and he is a 5/5. So the toughness is relevant, I would say, even outside of the indestructible. So hard guy to get rid of unless you have to deal with exile, which can be a thing, I admit it. Path to Exile, very common. And then what's that other, I think it's some exile spell in mono white that has Converge on it. That's going to show up, that'll be relevant. But otherwise, fairly hard to get rid of. But then what we got here is his activated ability, pay 2 generic and a green. Another target creature gets +2/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. This is essentially going to be our backup win condition that we can tutor for with those other cards that we talked about because of Renata Call to the Hunt. Renata says Renata's power is equal to your devotion to green. So if we have, let's say we do have a Renata out, that's already 2 pips. We'll say we have a Malira out on the battlefield. That will be, another additional green towards the devotion. And then let's say we have 2 Kitchen Finks. Even though this is Selesnya mana, it still counts as a green mana green mana towards it. So with 2 Kitchen Finks, that's already 4 devotion. So between 2, 4, 6, 7. Already between those cards, Renata is going to be a 7/3. And then if you, which it really isn't, I mean, it's not bad, but it's not super amazing. With Ronus, all of a sudden, pump her once, she is a 9/3 with trample. And that's kind of the backup game plan here, is if we don't get our artifacts for whatever reason, we can do a Renata Call to the Hunt plus Ronus the Indomitable beatdown plan. Because a 9/3 with trample, you have some things to worry about. You have to worry about Lightning Bolt. You have to worry about any 3-power creatures with First Strike. So this is not foolproof, but that's why this is kind of like our plan B. You're not supposed to win with just Renata hitting face, but it's something that can be done. So, yeah, ultimately, Ronus, just this single copy of Ronus is going to be our plan B if for whatever reason we can't get to the artifacts or we're up against an artifact-hating deck. This is, this single copy is kind of going to be our lifesaver there. As far as the sideboard, I don't have anything yet. I haven't thought too much about the sideboard. Obviously, because this is a kind of like a really good creature deck, we got creature tutors, and a lot of cards that get value off of creatures ultimately, including Ronus. I have some ideas as to what I want to put in the sideboard. I might include one more copy of Ronus. I don't know, we'll see. Prowling Serpapod from the Gruul version. Not as important in this version as the Gruul version is, because you're not getting those additional copies of Creatures Can't Be Countered with the Rhythm of the Wild. But, I mean, 1 or 2 copies of Prowling Serpapod, which could essentially turn into a theoretical 5 or 6 copies because of Eldritch Evolution. Those might be good to come in. I would not say Collector Oof because we still want to go down the Persist combo Infinite Sacrifice outlet, and we can only do that with artifacts, but Collector Oof could be an option. Rex Sage is a good one. Scavenging Ooze is a good one. So a lot of different ideas we could have for utility green creatures to put in the sideboard. I haven't given it too much thought, like I said, but yeah, right now this is just a very informal kind of getting my thoughts out there, seeing what possibilities mono green Persist could bring to the table. And as far as a starting point, I think I have a pretty good base. So if any of you guys have any ideas as to what I could do to improve this main board in the deck, or any good recommendations for sideboard, I am all ears. But until then, leave a comment if you're willing to help out, and I will talk to you guys soon.